Welcome to the world of Carry On. In this series, we're going to take a look behind the scenes at how some of the greatest Carry On films were ever made. In this episode, we take a look at the 1971 offering of Carry On at Your Convenience. So let's meet the cast who are about to provide the laughs, who seem to be flushed with success. Sidney James as Sid Plummer. Kenneth Williams as W.C. Boggs. Charles Hawtrey as Charles Coote. Joan Sims as Chloe Moore. Hattie Jakes as B.T. Plummer. Bernard Breslaw as Bernie Hulk. Kenneth Cope as Vic Spanner. Jackie Piper as Myrtle Plummer. Richard O'Callaghan as Lewis Boggs. And Patsy Rowlands as Hortense Withering. Carry On at Your Convenience started life off as Carry On Comrade, in reflection to the negative treatment of union and union bosses at the time. This film was announced as a 21st Carry On film at the time of Carry On Loving's release. However, with media interest intensifying with the coming-of-age production, Peter Rogers and Gerald Thomas decided to give the 21st film honour to a more lavished production, that being Carry On Henry. However, for Carry On Comrade, it was pushed back to mid-spring of 1971. By the time the film was coming into production, the film had already changed its name to Carry On Working. That title was used at the final closing sequence of the film, and to make confusion even worse, the word convenience wasn't very well known across the United States of America, in opposed to their normal John Thomas, I guess. So, for countries abroad such as America and of course Australia, it was released under the title Carry On Round the Bend. However, in Britain, the word convenience and its gag was seized upon with the maximum of publicity. So much so that Dalton & Co. were happy to help with the supplying of the fine sanitary ware that was on display throughout the film. But it took 22 films for the usual Carry On toilet gag to be produced into an actual film, which some would say could have happened a lot sooner. Carry On legend though, Terry Scott, filmed a pivotal boardroom debate scene as union bigwig Mr. Alcock. He was paid the pricey sum of just £500 for one day's work on the 20th of April 1971. However, Gerald Thomas had to cut the whole scene. Writing a personal note to Terry on the 10th of June of the same year, he said, "No way any reflection on you or your performance, but the film finished 50 minutes over length, and we felt rather than cut your sequence down, we just decided to take the whole thing out, basically." But probably the most exciting and most memorable scene of the whole entire film was when the team went down to Brighton for a good old knees up, which was filmed right at the very end of shooting the film. So on Monday the 3rd of May, transport was laid on and the team was whisked down to the Sussex coast by coach. It has been suggested over the years that the pre-production unit decided to meet up in the hotel, the Royal Albion, directly opposite the Palace Pier, and filming would commence exactly on that same day at 1:30 p.m. All filming in and around Brighton had been wrapped up 2 days later on the 5th of May. Urban legend claims that the film's return journey home from Brighton was filmed actually on the return home. However, it wasn't. It was done the following day around the Ivor Heath area. So that's enough sanitary ware for one episode. Let's have a look at what the film is all about. The film starts off in the W.C. Boggs toilet factory. And the first thing that comes up against union worker Vic Spanner is that there will be no tea served on the factory floor anymore. This provokes him to call everyone for a general meeting in the canteen in 10 minutes. Lewis Boggs decides to give a bit of a lecture about time and motion, and with that, Vic Spanner calls everybody out for the first strike of the film. Vic Spanner wants to take Myrtle Plummer out on a date to the football match. She decides to politely decline and go out with Lewis Boggs to the cinema. During this strike time that they have, he spends half the time with his mate Bernie Hulk, travelling around on the back of his bike, spying on both of them to see what they're getting up to. Meanwhile, Sid Plummer is putting many bets on many horses. Unbeknown to him at the time, his budgie starts giving him tips on winning horses just by chirping. He cleans up at the bookies. A return back to the factory looks quite successful, But when they find that they can't fit a certain fitting on a toilet, it all goes AWOL again, and once again, they're called out on strike. Whilst it looks like the factory could be in disrepair, WC Boggs noticed that everyone is returning to work. However, they're not back to work. They're about to go on their annual works outing to Brighton. So, WC Boggs decides that it's time, if you can't beat them, to join them. And so he does. Myrtle is now back on with Vic, but toeing the line is Lewis Boggs, who chases her to Brighton, gives her an offer she can't refuse. And really, that's it. They return to work at the end of the film, and, well, they carry on working. Carry On Your Convenience was released on the 10th of December 1971, 2 weeks ahead of Christmas. And whilst it wasn't exactly a great Christmas present for all, it wasn't very well received at the time of release. It was met with muted laughter, and the empathy and capitalism and misjudgment of treatment of the unions didn't really fare well with the cinema goers. Up to this point, this was the first Carry On film to flop at the cinemas. Even with the most loyal Carry On fan base, it still didn't really make an impact. Normally, the great popularity of the films usually saw a profit margin just after 3 days. However, it wasn't until 1976 until this film broke even. With the overseas distribution rights and the television rights, it was safe to say that Carry On Convenience had finally made some money that it had lost. But now, this film is regarded as probably the fans' all-time favourite. It gets highly ranked up there within everyone's top 3. There's something magical and something special about Carry On Convenience that really has all the magic that a Carry On needs. What is it? Is it the trip down to Brighton? Is it the classic toilet gags? Or is it that the whole film just fits together perfectly like a perfect jigsaw? Times have changed. And whilst now these days unions are not what it's all about, people can now look at this with a light-hearted laugh without getting too upset or getting too sensitive at the nature of the film. Maybe that's the answer. However, Carry On Your Convenience happens to be one of the all-time greatest Carry On films, and every Carry On film will put this in their top 10, without a doubt. Until next time, carry on laughing.